Alright, welcome back to the channel. We're making it into November, which means playoff rankings all coming about. The very first one coming out this past Tuesday, and no Louisiana team is anywhere close with it. Honestly, the closest team might actually be Tulane, who are actually playing Memphis tonight on the road to see if they can save their season to make a playoff. But instead of going on and covering both of those, because that's on the road, that's not in Louisiana. So in the other way, I'm going to be going into Cajun country with the Louisiana Lafayette Raging Cajuns, another team that's highly disappointed this year. And just like Lafayette themselves, they're going to play another team that has a record very similar to them in Texas State. Now, Texas State, no wins in the conference on the season, 3-5 on the season total. So they have 4 more games left over. But at this point, they are more likely to end up making a bowl game. But with this being the last year with them in the Sun Belt, they were kind of hoping that this would have been more of a graceful exit in the conference and they'd be more inclined, more set up to do well once they actually get into one of the big boys. In the Pac-12, unfortunately, the Pac-12 is mostly going to be consisting of Mountain West teams and then the hangovers of Washington State, Oregon State, and then Texas State conveniently because they're one of the most Western teams that didn't just transfer to another conference that just didn't transfer into another conference. But yeah, Texas State 3-5 on the season, 0-4 in conference, the only team in the West Division that doesn't have a win in conference. Even Monroe has a win in conference, so say that what you mean, but yeah, Louisiana as well, 2-3 in conference, 3-6 overall, and both of these teams essentially have the opposite issues on this team. So we'll start off with Lafayette getting their first win in 4 weeks as they beat South Alabama last week, and what they were able to do for the first time basically all season since the McNeese game, they did not commit a turnover. Every single game, not to the extensive level of back-to-back-to-back as Monroe has had through the past basically month of the season, but every single game they've had awful quarterback play, mostly through interceptions, as they have 11 interceptions on the season, which is one of the worst in the country, bottom 10 in the country. Florida Atlantic has 11 by their starting quarterback, which is the most by an individual player. Lafayette just decided to split that up between 3 people. But finally, it looks like Lafayette has shown a consistent effort on keeping with one of those quarterbacks in Lunch Winfield out of Lutcher. He started as a third-string quarterback, and out of him, Daniel Beal and Walker Howard, he's been able to show the most mobility, be able to keep more of a dual threat offense, and at this point was actually very efficient through the air. He was 14 of 15 on the game with that 232 yards, leading them for nearly 400 yards total, and yeah, getting them their first win a month against South Alabama and a needed conference win, because if they didn't get this one, they weren't going to make a bowl game. It's going to be a little tough to get it for the last 3 games, but there's still a shot. As you can see, losses against Rice, Eastern Michigan, kind of made you think this might not be the season that we were kind of hoping for, since you figured Walker Howard coming in with all the hype, 4-star, sometimes 5-star recruit as a dual threat passer whenever he came into college. He hasn't lived up to the hype, hoping that whenever he was coming home into Lafayette, it was going to build and show his skill set. Hasn't turned out well. On the season, 111 yards, no touchdowns, 3 picks, 21 QBR, which is awful. Daniel Beal's been even worse. Out of Catholic, 395 through the air. He was a starter last season once their top 2 quarterbacks went down. 1 touchdown, 4 interceptions, 15.2 QBR. At that point, they didn't show a pulse of being able to throw the ball anywhere downfield with any sort of consistency. So what did they finally decide to do? They go for one that can actually run and is more mobile, more elusive. And they come up with Lunch Winfield. Starting out as the number 3 starter. And you did start to see some progress in the Marshall game. And then they kind of battle back and forth between, it's like, oh, Winfield's going to be starting until Howard gets back healthy. And then with James Madison, Southern Miss, and Troy, he comes back healthy. And then he can't deliver worth anything, so they go back to Winfield. And he's able to lead this South Alabama team, well, this team against the South Alabama on the road. Has he been perfect? No, but 7 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, at least a positive touchdown to interception ratio, 903 yards, with more than double Beal's count, and basically 8 times the count of Walker Howard. A QBR more than double Howard, more than 4 times of Beal. And maybe at this point they'll be able to show some sort of momentum for the latter portion of the season to make a bowl game. This game they go against Texas State. Texas State, well, before I get into Texas State, the other thing that the Raging Cajuns had to deal with, they haven't been able to get consistent pass catcher. Earlier on in the season, they had Shelton Sampson coming in, transferring from LSU, and he had a knack of getting open against McNeese, against Rice, where his concern was whenever he was getting targeted, even all the way back to the opening against Rice, he had 4 drops in that Rice game. I know they may count it as less, but you had the entire stands booing Shelton Sampson. All the hype in the world. Most of that game, you actually cannot fault Howard for a lot of the mistakes. Yes, he could not complete 10 completion passes, and whenever he finally did it at the end, he had his injury that got him out for basically a month and a half. Sampson gets hurt a couple games later, and then you get Robert Williams, the returning senior, getting a few pretty decent games off of the Eastern Michigan game, 7 for 71, James Madison, 5 for 134. This was still at the point where they're trying to figure out what they wanted to do at the quarterback position. Southern Miss and Troy still trying to figure that out. Not really sure what's going on with it, but once you get Sampson back, he becomes more of the focal point of the offense. 5 for 74 and 6 for 138 and 2 scores last week in the win. Now we go into Texas State, where starting out of the season, 2 straight wins against Eastern Michigan, Texas, San Antonio, and conveniently they have an Eastern Michigan game in common, but different things. What Lafayette was not able to do is to be able to keep a hold of the ball and be able to stop anybody on defense. If you see in all of their losses and all of their wins except the Nichols game that they blew them out, 27 against Eastern Michigan, 36 they gave up against Texas San Antonio, Arizona State giving up 34. That's not that bad. Then lost by giving up 31 to Arkansas State, who struggled to get anything against Monroe. Then losing in overtime, giving over 40 against Troy, 40 more against Marshall, and 52 against James Madison. Yes, I understand Troy and James Madison are both undefeated in conference, so those offensive exploits were going to be expected against most teams in conference anyway, but every single game that was any sort of competitive, it got let down because they could not stop anyone. They do not have a single fumble forced or recovered on the season. And you're 8 games in. You got 4 games left of your Texas State. Just think of how they're going to be in the Pac-12 next year. Look at how their defense is now. Yes, the transfer portal is going to help out next year as more people are going to be wanting to go for the Bobcats and get more into this team just because they're going to have a bigger name brand with the bigger conference. But they have the last 4 games of the season. This game, and then Southern Miss, where they're going to be an underdog in Southern Miss. And then Monroe and South Alabama. They're going to have to win one of that Louisiana or Southern Miss game to make a bowl game themselves. And then Monroe honestly could be a toss-up as well. And then South Alabama, they should be favored in. So win one of those last 2 games, you have a shot at the bowl game. Maybe get some sort of momentum going into the Pac-12. But looking at South Alabama, looking at Texas State themselves, You see that entire line of transfer portal members coming in this year, and it is a spread around from Division 2, from other Power 4 teams and other Group of 5 teams just like themselves. For the most part, you can disregard all of that 40 players that come in and the 29 players that left through the transfer portal, because most of them have not been a factor on this team. You want to see why? Look at their entire offense. Everyone on this team, everyone that is in blue off of this is returning members. They're not transfers. They're not incoming freshmen. They were on this team last year. So you figure there's going to be a lot of expectations for Texas State as everybody came back. But their defense, the one that actually got all those transfers in, they cannot stop a soul. But going on to the good of the quarterback, Brad Jackson, dual threat quarterback, he is going to end up running the ball double-digit times in this game. And for the most part, outside of these last 2 games, he's protected the ball in the air as well. They are actually one of the most explosive offenses actually in the country. And Jackson, at least as a passer, hasn't been giving up the ball that much. Yes, 4 of his 5 interceptions are in the last 2 games against Marshall and James Madison. That's unfortunate, but he got into a shootout with Marshall, 444 yards passing. It was going to be bound to happen. But yeah, he has a lot of his shoulders on the ground and through the air. So at some point, as a redshirt freshman, mistakes are going to happen if you're giving so much emphasis on one person to get so much of the productivity. It's not just him for everything. They do have the returning running back redshirt senior Lincoln Paré, also on the team from last year. Pretty consistent, besides the last 2 games where they went pass happy. 60 plus yards in every single game, double-digit runner. In 3 games over 100 yards. And all but 2 of the games he at least had a touchdown, including 3 against Troy in the loss with 113 yards. So he's been very good on the ground as well. In the air, your main 2 targets being Bo Sparks on the season, multiple games of 150 plus yards, and even with that Eastern Michigan game, his big highlight, 4 touchdown receptions on 7 receptions. But yeah, total on the season, 6 touchdowns. And then Chris Dawn, also once again on the team last year. It is a trend. 3 of his 7 games played over 100 yards receiving, including that 180 yards against Marshall. There's a trend. A lot of these players, big stat lines, is going to be against Marshall with that 444 by Jackson. It was a shootout and went to overtime. As you can see throughout the Sun Belt, they're 3rd in the conference in total offense, tied for 2nd in total points with 31 points a game. But you see on their defense, they give up 34 points a game. They have 3 turnovers on the season by their defense. All 3 of them are interceptions. And absolutely, once again, 0 fumbles forced, 0 fumbles recovered. That is crazy to have absolutely nothing on defense to show. Not even anything falling out. So they are just driving on the field time after time after time. Yes, it is almost surprising that they're not the worst defense in the league. But yeah, third best offense in the league, 3rd worst defense in the league. So regardless what you do know to expect, this game is going to be a shootout. I'll have to look to actually what the total is on it. Bet the over. It's going to be some fireworks. It's just going to be in 2 different ways. 15th in the country in total yards, 471. 250 on the air and just over 215 on the ground. And then also in the top 25 in points per game. So very productive, consistently productive. The only one that they really weren't that much of a factor on scoring was that Arizona State game, and that's kind of to be expected. And then going back to Louisiana, you see their issue on it. Louisiana's issue is they're bottom 5 in the country in interceptions thrown. As I said, 11 interceptions by their 3 quarterbacks. Now, it does not sound like they're going to try and bounce between quarterbacks, trying to get Walker Howard back on the field with this. It looks like Winfield's going to end up being the guy for this game. So, but because of those 11 interceptions, they're also one of the bottom, close to the bottom feeders in turnover differential. The combination of Louisiana also having 9 fumbles on the season and a turnover ratio of -7. So Texas State, their whole thing, they don't really have that much on turnovers. Yes, they get about 1 a game. Most of it's kind of been jilted up from the past couple games, but most of it is because in 8 games they've had 11 turnovers. That's not awful. It's just their defense can't get anything back. So just with this game, expect a shootout. In different ways, you're going to get a balanced running offense between Winfield's running, then going with Zylan Perry and Bill Davis, who have been less than ideal for their offense this year, but still have a decent bit of production, just about 5 yards a carry between the both of them. If they can show that their offense has some sort of a consistent pulse on the air, which, if they can't do it against Texas State, they're not going to be able to do it against anybody this season. But both ways, on the air and in the ground, Texas State's been terrible. Bottom 10 in the country. And they should be able to take some advantage of it. Expect this game to be in the 30s on both teams at the very least. But I'll be there tomorrow. We'll see how it goes. Winner of this game is going to have a decent shot to be able to keep their season alive, to be able to get to a bowl game. Likely between the two of them, the winner is going to be set aside to be able to go potentially for like the Independence game or the New Orleans Bowl. But we'll see how that goes from there. But thank y'all for watching. More videos coming soon. Sorry this is going to feel a little quick on putting things together and all of it, but game's tomorrow. We'll see what happens. Hopefully Lafayette shows some life and shows that DeSormo actually has a pulse to be able to keep this team up and running despite their lackluster middle of the season flaws, and that South Alabama game can give them a bit of momentum. But yeah, please like and subscribe if y'all enjoy the content. More is going to be coming soon. A little bit of reaction, honestly, probably next week to the playoff rankings, but more things coming soon. Maybe a little content with LSU basketball once it gets closer to conference season, because you don't want to get too hyped on that on pre-conference as it happened last year. But yeah, I'll see you on the next video. I'm out.